3 minutes until showtime. Minutes until showtime.
And the Eagles better get busy if they want to finish this.
Shadows moving on the sand. Somebody whispering between the songs. Just your rifle in his trembling hand. Somebody trying just to stay alive. He got from the kids to keep. Over the ocean in America. Far away in fantasy. Silent stars blinking.
1 minute until showtime.
Gold silver satellites, gold sea caravans passing by. Galaxies unfolding, new worlds being born. Pilgrims and prodigals creeping toward the dawn. Long road out of Eden.
Kind of an appropriate song to play for our subject, huh?
Music blasting from an empty on a bright
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Blog Talk Radio.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big BA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need, we know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. And my guest today is Robert Pelton. Robert, I've known Robert for a long time. He's got a heritage, claims a heritage going all the way back to well before the War of American Independence. Robert's done a lot of books, and I'm featuring a number of them, his survival manuals, and which is what he was doing when I first met him almost 20 years ago. About that, if your daughter was 13 when I gave her a ride and she's 30 now and got you a bunch of grandkids, that's been a little while ago, Robert.
That's been quite a while, but I'll tell you one thing, that was the thrill of her life. Getting on that big Harley, riding around that parking lot, she has never forgotten that. She always knows your name, too. She knows your name after all these years.
Well, you know, I'm getting a little worried here. You know, when I call your phone, your wife goes, "It's the Free American." Oh, maybe that's caller ID and not just my voice, right?
Oh, it was, well, no, we had the photo thing on the phone, you know, and it was so bad, your picture, that she about fainted when she said that. She said, "Oh my God, it's Free American." Oh.
Now, we can go in a lot of different directions, and what I before we talk about the McCarthy Chronicles,
yeah. Oh,
we've got all of these up on my website, folks. You can read about it. You can read about Robert. You can click on this. You can find out what your treason IQ is. You know, this is all in the McCarthy Chronicles. But what I want to ask you about is the other book that we've got up here, and we've got this. Oops, I'm here. It's about our troops here. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling around here trying to find where I'm at, but it's these.
You have not changed a bit.
Unwanted, dead or alive. Unwanted, the betrayal of American POWs following World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. You know, to me, what's happening right now is anytime a communist regime, I've told people, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first, the intelligentsia next, that's the McCarthys out there that know what they're doing, and third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement who still have loyalty to the old regime. In our case, that would be the Constitution. Am I correct in that statement?
Absolutely correct. You forgot one thing. In Cambodia, that anybody that wore glasses was executed. I don't know why. That was a sign of intelligence, I guess. I don't know. Anyone wearing glasses was exterminated when they took over Cambodia. So, yeah, I mean, you go on and on. But the thing about it is, you say when the communists took over. Actually, the communists never took over anything, Clay. It was our government, our State Department, our foreign policy, controlled by the Alger Hiss relatives coming down the line since he was there in the 30s with Roosevelt. Hey, it's controlled by the same people, and they turned, and the CIA, I have never heard of a place where America came out first, where the CIA was involved in the problem they had over there. Say, for example, in guerrilla warfare and so on, a communist group trying to overthrow the government, we always assisted the wrong guy. I mean, that's in my opinion. Of course, in their opinion, they assisted the right guy. I mean, Fidel Castro never got in power in Cuba because he was a communist or because he had the forces. No, because we sold out the Cuban government. We supported Castro. Why? We knew what he was. Oh, gee, the dummies in Washington dumbing it down saying, we didn't know he was a communist. We thought he was an agrarian reformer. Well, hey, we heard the same thing in 1949 with the Chinese, with Chiang Kai-shek. We betrayed the Chinese, the good Chinese, Chiang Kai-shek, and we gave it over to the Reds by funding them money, funding them arms, everything. we gave, oh yeah, people can say, yeah, we gave a lot of arms and equipment to Chiang Kai-shek. Well, we did. But the thing about it is, none of the machine guns we gave them, none of the rifles we gave them worked. And besides that, we didn't give them ammunition. And if we did give it, we gave them the wrong ammunition. So we disarmed China by supplying them with arms.
Now, I've also made the statement that three communist countries ganged up on Germany, and this, I mean, Uncle Joe Stalin, I mean, wasn't he responsible for killing 60 million white Russians? The Mao killed millions or more of Chinese, and we fought Germany. I mean, Hitler may not have been the best guy in the world, but he was probably as good or better than George Bush or Obama.
Well, he certainly was not a Stalin, no matter what the propagandists have told us that he was. There's a lot of things he wasn't. And, I mean, we've discolored this man to the point where he's the demon himself. He's the devil himself. Actually, Khrushchev came through after Stalin. He was one of his henchmen. He was one of his executioners. Khrushchev became head of Russia. During the Stalin regime, Khrushchev was responsible for killing 11 million people in the Ukraine. Why? Because they were independent farmers and they would not cooperate with collective farming. They weren't used to it. They didn't want it. Hey, give the state most of it. We get enough just to eat on it sometimes. Well, so he executed 11 million. How did he do this? Well, he set up barricades. Nobody could go in and out of the Ukraine for food. No fertilizer could be sent in. No, nothing. They starved the people to death. That's essentially what they did. But hey, 11 million people? That's Nikita Khrushchev. And then our president of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, went to Camp David with Khrushchev, and his grandchildren sat on Khrushchev's knee, and Eisenhower said, in effect, I'm paraphrasing this, gee, he's really not a bad guy. He's the grandfather type. Gee, he likes my grandchildren. Well, yeah, but he killed probably millions of grandchildren of other people during the Ukraine thing. It just doesn't make sense. Eisenhower himself, an old-time American.
I'm trying to hook up here with one other station here.
All right.
I have to do this a little bit into the show because their commercials won't cut off in time for me to get on. So my guest is Robert Pelton, and now we're on Truth Radio, broadcasting on Truth Radio. All right.
Right, let me ask you a couple of questions for your listeners. Are you on the air?
Yes, sir. We're on the air.
All right. We've got, you've got them on your website. It's called the McCarthy Chronicles.
Yes.
Part 1 is treason. Part 2 is traitors.
Yes.
I want to ask your listeners a couple of questions. And this is to determine whether or not they ought to read these books. And I would ask them this. First of all, what is your traitor IQ? That is for Part 2, Traitors, the McCarthy Chronicles. And then, if you answer the questions, it's okay, and hey, great. But if you miss one or more, you should read this book. Let me ask you this. Which Secretary of State was identified as a Soviet agent? How many of the 17 Americans, well, let me answer that first. Alger Hiss, Secretary of State. How many 17 Americans who helped create the United Nations were later exposed as communist moles? Clay, all of them were except one. Who was the one? Well, he was a man who was so far left he might as well have been carrying a card. If he didn't, he was not paying his dues and he shipping them out of their dues, But that was Adlai Stevenson. He was the only one of the 17 Americans created the UN who was not identified as a communist mole, which means an agent of the Soviet Union. Another question, who allowed the head of the American Communist Party to have an office in the White House? The head of the American Communist Party? Yes, it was Harry Hopkins, a good friend of Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, Franklin Roosevelt allowed him to have an office next to his in the White House. Imagine this, the top Communist Party man in the country. One more. What president promoted a highly placed communist mole after the FBI had exposed the man? Well, Harry Truman. The name was Robert Oppenheimer. Got promoted.
Let me just stop you. We give Oppenheimer credit for starting the whole nuclear bomb thing, right?
Oh yes. Right,
now
right,
let me ask you something here. You know, we know that the communist spies, that took and gave all of the atomic secrets to Russia. We executed them, didn't we? But who's made all the money off of arming both Russia and the United States? Why do we have so many thousands of nuclear weapons stored up there in Albuquerque under that mountain? Why do we do that? Who makes the money off of that? Off of weapons that we've only used once in the last century?
Good question. Oh, cool. Hey, I got to ask you one thing. I got to mention one thing before we get into that. I've got to ask you this.
Okay.
Because there's a new movie out. My son-in-law saw the movie. It's on J. Edgar Hoover, supposedly an authentic biography about this great American patriot. And I want your listeners to realize what I said. Great American patriot. Now, my son-in-law is very upset because he's pretty much aware, being around me, he has to listen sometimes and hear some things I say. Well, he said, I watched the movie, I was so disturbed because he said they presented J. Edgar Hoover as a homosexual. That was the bottom line. They didn't say he was, but they made you think he was. Now, secondly, that he liked to dress in women's clothes, and he had an entourage, which means, of course, a group of kids, indicating he was a pedophile. Well, come on. I told my son, he was aware of this. But I said, you know, that all came out in a, quote, best-selling New York Times bestseller on J. Edgar Hoover. Some guy, I don't remember his name, this crumb, he doesn't deserve to be remembered. He deserves to be probably hanged in a public square for treason. He wrote the book, and yeah, freedom of speech is fine, but freedom to lie is not. He wrote a book on J. Edgar Hoover, and he came out with this crap about J. Edgar Hoover liked to wear women's clothes, and he had a bunch of kids that he liked to have sex with. He slept with them, but he would sit, big, fat, portly, whatever you want to describe the man, in a dress, sitting on a little throne with all these kids at his feet. I mean, that was total bull. That was total lies. Why? Because J. Edgar Hoover was the man who exposed a whole lot of crap going on in America, and he was a firm believer in, he was a firm anti-communist, he was a firm believer in the Constitution, and he could not do anything.
Well, look at McCarthy. I mean, McCarthy and anybody that was standing up against these people have been demonized. I mean, I've got people in so-called in the Patriot movement, Lynn Horowitz's main squeeze, telling people or calling me a pedophile. I mean, my God, I raised 2 sons. You know, they're grown. I got granddaughters. What the hell are they talking about? They just pull shit out of the air.
It's only, what are they talking about? I'll tell you. They're talking about, they're blowing it out of proportion. They're making things up. They're lying. So what are you going to do about it? You know, they're lying. They lied about Hoover. They lied about this man and created a pedophile out of one of the greatest American patriots. Why? Because he died. You know, they didn't dare do it while he was still alive. But he dies, and then a book comes out, a bestseller, exposing all of this sex crap about this great man, and then a movie comes out, and of all this, Leonardo DiCaprio I call him, he's a nothing as far as I'm concerned. He's a Hollywood actor, he's a nothing. When he took that job of presenting J. Edgar Hoover, I mean, this is really a trashy actor, making a lot of money off the American people, and then making a movie discrediting one of our great patriots. They did to Hoover what they did to McCarthy. They did to McCarthy what they did to Forrestal. The only thing with Forrestal is a physical assassination.
I love what Forrestal told McCarthy. He said, McCarthy said something about him being stupid. He said, no, consistency is not the mark of stupidity. If they were just stupid, occasionally they'd make a mistake in our favor.
Exactly. He said, yeah, right. They say but here's the problem. Forrestal kept a diary. Okay, Harry Truman, as president, used the presidential force, power. He confiscated the diary, arrested Forrestal. I say arrested. He did not arrest him. I'm sorry. He picked him up. He had some doctors declare him mentally incompetent, and he put him in Bethesda under lock and key.
And threw him out of the 13th floor window with a sheet.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. They say it was. Here's the thing. They said it was suicide. He went out the window. Yes, and he had a noose around a bathrobe tie around his neck. So he was strangled first, and then thrown out. So they said, oh, he committed suicide, he jumped out the window. That is so unhistorical, so wrong, and that can be verified. I mean, but see, the media, of course, the controlled media, and I'm not exaggerating, the controlled media, if you don't believe it, then look at the presidential campaign held by Obama just a few years ago. Nothing was brought out about the man's past. Nothing was brought out about his sex life. But there is a book called The Manchurian President, written by I believe a German, at least a European. It's on the market. You can get it, probably pick it up for $5 at alibus.com. But it's a book that exposes the president and all of his people that he has appointed to these offices. They're all Marxists. They're all, I'm being polite. They're all communists. They're radicals. They're so far left.
It's quite possible that they're behind Breitbart's assassination.
Well, it's quite possible. There's nothing beyond this. There's nothing that is not perhaps possible. Because they are a vindictive, a hate-filled, a mongering. Look, what's the job of Marxists? They kill. Get in their way, they kill. That's Marxism. I mean, that's it. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of the Marxism. Take over Russia. Look, they're in power in our country. We have a Marxist president. Somebody will say, oh, yeah, he's a Muslim. Well, yeah, okay, he's a Marxist Muslim. Fine, he's an M&M.
If they happen to be Jewish, all of a sudden there's a problem with it because you shouldn't use the word Jew when talking about politics?
Well, you see, that's another thing with the media has made the word Jew that nobody can use it. They can't use the word McCarthy. If they use McCarthy, I'm sorry, they use McCarthy as if you are what you do with your show, you're a McCarthyite. That's supposed to scare you away from saying anything. Now, if you say something about a politician, two things they say. One, are you questioning my patriotism? Well, hell yes, I'm questioning a lot of their patriotism. Why? Because of the way they have voted, the way they have acted, the way they have not followed the Constitution, which to them doesn't exist. So we have quite a few socialists in our Congress. Well, yeah, I'm questioning their patriotism. And then secondly, they would say, oh, that smacks of McCarthyism. Well, what is McCarthyism? It's what the media has made to stop anybody from doing what McCarthy did. Anybody? Have you seen a congressman that investigated what McCarthy did since then? No. Have you seen any politician bring it up? No. It disappeared. All the crap that McCarthy exposed, hey, McCarthy really exposed very little. McCarthy got the press. Senator Jim Eastland, I was living in Mississippi at the time, people don't realize this, but Senator Jim Eastland headed what was called the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee, which was doing what McCarthy was accused of doing. But they were uncovering all of these different avenues of penetration by Soviet agents into the United States government, all departments, Treasury, State Department, come on, everything. Okay, so you go on with this thing. We had the House Un-American Activities Committee, which was also in the House of Representatives, was exposing Reds in various aspects of the United States government. Well, what happened? They were destroyed from within. You got some left-wing politicians got in on the board, you might say, on the committee, and they work to destroy where are the committees today? There are none. Is there any you can name? Anybody out there listening? Can you name a committee in Congress, in either the Senate or the House, who is investigating these people? No, because they don't dare. Because the whole thing, McCarthy was exposed and damned to make you realize, if you're a congressman, you don't touch this. This is what we can do. We're powerful. We can do this. We can destroy you, and we will.
I had a woman. I just spoke at the library. I was invited to speak at the Awake and Aware. I gave the woman a copy of my books, and my book says on it, you know, the Israelite Handbook for True Christians, Mystery Babylon, New World Order Unveiled. Today's headlines were written over 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us that the coming of the New World Order is the eighth beast, the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not. Jesus told us that they were liar and of their father Satan in this book. The past meets the future. And the woman tells me, well, you can speak here, Clay, but you just can't mention the word Jew. Now, what they tried to do to McCarthy was they tried to say he was anti-Semitic too, and that's the trick that they use, because I'm willing to talk about them and not just call them Zionists or you know, Edomites or anything else. I don't, you know, they came, most of these people we're talking about came from Russia. They were driven down to Palestine to form a safe country called Israel. That's with the Balfour Declaration. They tried to get the first one world government set up. That was the League of Nations, and two countries wouldn't go along with it. One of them, they killed the Tsar. The other one, they gave us the Federal Reserve.
Well, let me ask you a question here, Clay.
Yes, sir.
What can you do about it? Okay, you've got some good books, okay? I've got some great books, as far as I'm concerned. You notice I called yours good, mine great. That was not a slip of the tongue. But, okay, the McCarthy Chronicles, 2 books. The Unwanted, Dead or Alive, is an expose of what our government, our people in government did to our prisoners of war. They made them expendable. They didn't give a damn. So they left American boys over there who were, at the time they went in, were 17, 18, 19 years old. They ended up fighting for their country, ended up getting captured, ended up, God forbid, they never would have imagined this in their wildest dreams. They'd be in a prison camp in a jungle somewhere in Vietnam, or in Cambodia, or in Laos. But we never rescued them. To this day, they're there. They're probably most of them dead. Yes, but there are probably some still alive. What are we doing about it? Well, it's taboo. You don't mention it anymore. The whole point is this. We had here in Fayetteville, where I live now, we had Fort Bragg, which is the home of the Special Forces, Special Operations Groups, and home of Airborne. Big time. I mean, they're great training programs, okay? Now, I've got Unwanted, Dead or Alive. It was a sponsored program with the museum here in Fayetteville, a Special Operations Museum, beautiful, beautiful museum of all of the different military branches and what's, you know, things that went on. Even has a cage in there of what they did with the Vietnamese, did to our prisoners, a wooden bamboo cage. And one of the fellows at one time was in there for about 6 years, and he escaped. And he was later assassinated in the Philippines. He was a Special Forces guy. And anyway, the whole point is this. My book. It was a special welcome home week to the Vietnam veterans because they had never been welcomed home after the war. So this is beautiful. The city of Fayetteville sponsored a thank you thing for the Vietnam vets. A welcoming home thing. Parades, everything. Okay, special events in the museum. I go down there early on and I take my book down and I say, hey, I'd like you to consider this book for the museum. I mean, it's a book on POWs. Well, okay, I left it there. Never got an answer. I went down during the events. We went every day for the week, me and my wife, and I met a lot of the guys that were Rolling Thunder, who had their cycles and bikes and went to Washington and created quite a stir, reminding people of the POW situation. I met a lot of Rolling Thunder guys. Okay, really great guys.
Artie Mueller, I got to put in a little, plug. Artie Mueller, the dictator, put that on. I sponsored him. I gave him a full-page ad in every one of my magazines every year.
Well, listen, they had what happened with my book. Now, this is important because, hey, look, the book deserves to be read. Okay? I found out from the manager of the museum, a lady, I asked her, why, hey, what happened with the book? She said, oh, the person who does the